Thank you. So, thank you for this kind introduction. I'm very happy to be here with Nathalie Franc, and we will have the occasion to share our experience of implementing a program of nonviolent resistance in a very particular group of families and parents, and we will tell you a little bit about this, this pilot experience, which is currently also in a research program. Actually, we don't have the results of the research yet, but I wanted to start with just giving a little insight of how we encountered nonviolent resistance, how we thought it would be interesting in a particular kind of population we were dealing with, quite difficultly, I have to say. And so I'm really excited to be here. I want to really thank the organizers, and especially Haim Omer, because we have invited him to come to Montpellier to give some conferences there. And now we are very excited to be here and to share our own experience. So this is my disclosure. And a little summary. I'm going to talk about nonviolent resistance, the implementation in France. And it is a history of encounters and also of empowerment. And I will tell you a little bit about this. I'm going also to introduce the notion of conduct disorder restricted to family context, address the unmet needs in conduct disorder, but also in ODD, family context restricted, and what the unmet needs in treatment. Then Nathalie is going to talk about CD and ODD and how we came from this kind of concept to the concept of the tyrannic behaviors in the family, and to a concept that is more oriented towards the dynamics in the family interactions. Then we're going to introduce a little bit the nonviolent resistant-based group sessions for parents, and then I will not, finally, we will not talk about the protocol that much, but we have a testimony of a mother that has been in the group, and she accepted to be interviewed, and so you can also have her input. So this was the last meeting we had in Montpellier with Haim Omer. I think you remember in September, last September, really bright day in Montpellier. Actually, there were two groups. There was a big conference like here, and we also had a little training groups with Haim Omer, which were also designed to help people implement nonviolent resistance directly in the different clinics. And this is the difficult thing we faced, I think, because sometimes people are very, generally people are very interested, and really I think the program really brings something new, but then the difficult thing is to implement this in the different clinics. And also it is quite difficult because in France we have a kind of a problematic situation, I would say, in child and adolescent psychiatry, because it is difficult to, yesterday there was a lot of talk about the bubble we create sometimes in some kind of psychotherapeutic approaches and sessions, and to come out of this is quite difficult because people have been trained that way, and it's also difficult to step out of France probably for some of my colleagues, but actually this is not the attitude we have in Montpellier. I would say we are very eager to move and exchange with other people. And that's also the story I wanted to introduce, because when I first met nonviolent resistance, I didn't know Haim Omer at all. I was struggling with a very difficult situation, because I was at this time working in Paris in the community center, and also it was related to a university hospital facility. And I was struggling with a family. Actually, she was a single mother with an adopted child with a severe ADHD conduct disorder. And during the sessions we had together, the child was always very calm, not problematic at all. And at home, it was completely the contrary. At home, it was very, very difficult. It was terrible, actually. And we went through with this family every different possibility of treatment, because the mother had a parent management treatment. She also had a personal psychotherapy. The kid had CBT approaches, individual CBT approaches. He also had medication, and it was not succeeding very well, because we were quite in a good relationship, in a therapeutic relationship. This was went quite well. And now I know that I have to acknowledge myself for this, but at the moment it wasn't the case. And I went to a congress, and in this congress I always go to the library. The library is one of the important spots, I think, of the congresses. And so I went to the library, and I took the book, the first edition of the Nonviolent Resistance, and it was, I think, 2007. And I read this in the plane and afterwards, and I said, well, this is something very new. And I really wanted to try it out with this family and this mother. So she accepted to read the book in English, and she bought the book, and we started together implementing this. And I was not experienced at all in this, in this kind of approach, but it was a very, very interesting experience, and I continued implementing this approach in conduct disorder therapy if you want. And things went on like this for a certain time, and I also, in parallel, because I'm also working in the research field, and I had possibilities to develop European projects with networks in Europe. And in one of these projects, which is called the Milestone Project, the Milestone Project is a project aimed at improving the transition between child and adolescent and adult psychiatry. And you may be aware of the problems we have in bridging the gap, because we have different cultures, professional cultures there. We have adolescents that want independence, and they perhaps don't want to go into care anymore, even if some of them need it. And so we have this quite interesting project, and there's also a Dutch team in this project. And I was discussing during one of the meetings with one of my Dutch colleagues, and asked him, well, what would you advise me to get for kind of training in my team to improve the approaches we have in, for conduct disorder and for the family struggling with these kids? And he told me, well, I would recommend you contact Haim Omer. And this is what I did. And I told him, you know, I know him, I read this book. And that's the story I wanted to tell to introduce the session, because that's how we met, and that's how Haim came to Montpellier. Then a couple of years ago, I came to Tel Aviv. It was my first time in Tel Aviv, and I met Haim and also a number of his colleagues, and this was also very interesting. And then we were discussing the implementation, and also I was discussing the specific aims we wanted to implement in a specific group, and I'm going to show you in which group. And we were talking about writing a book. And so Haim told me, but do you have an idea? You look too occupied to write a book now. Do you have an idea about a person from your team being able to do this? I said, yes, I know. I know. I thought, that Nathalie was going to make this book. And she didn't know anything about the plan. But actually, this went very well because I knew she would have the energy to implement the program. She would have the persistence to go and to ask for funding for research, and also to write the manual, what they did together with the help of Haim, and they had a good collaboration. And so this, I'm very grateful for this, because I think it's not so easy to do this, take this step, go from a pilot implementation into something that we really want to carry forward now. So that's the introduction. Now I want to talk a little bit about children with this phenotype of familial phenotype, if you like. Children with predominantly intrafamilial ODD and CD. And this you won't find a lot in the classifications, because you find ODD, you find CD, you find ADHD, but only in the ICD-10 there's a mention of conduct disorder confined to family context. Okay, very well. So you have a look at the details, and you see, okay, it's just that it's confined to family context. And then you have no other information whatever. And when you go into the literature, you don't find anything at all about this kind of particular presentation, or at least I didn't find a lot. It seems to be, the behavior in these children seems to be quite context dependent, because they show the disruptive behavior mainly in very familial contexts, mainly with their parents. So there's a dominance of this behavior in the familial relationship. Within some families, you really have an inversion of the familial hierarchy. It means the kids decide everything. Decides the car, decides where to eat, decides where to go on vacation, everything. You also have, in these kids, reactive and also proactive aggression is possible, because they have the classical rages, low frustration tolerance, irritability in some of these kids, mainly those with ADHD and also anxiety disorder. But you also have some sometimes more proactive aggression with emotional blackmail, suicide threats, and sometimes you also have deliberate destructive behavior. And they go to, they destroy things that belong to the parents, and sometimes things that parents value very much. So it's quite kind of difficult. And this, we had some case series of these families, and we noticed that this behavior was co-occurrent with ADHD, also very prevalent in our population were anxiety disorders, separation anxiety, but also ODD, sometimes eating disorder like anorexia, and all the spectrum of the mood dysregulation disorders. That means you go from bipolar disorder also to depression, but sometimes also this new phenotype that was described in the DSM-5, the disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. But this is not all, and it's associated with family factors. And these family factors where the child had a sort of often a position in the family like a precious child, a somatic, a child with somatic and disorders, life-threatening conditions sometimes when the child was small. And parental factors we noticed, but these are only in the cases, in the clinical cases we had. Sometimes old age, problems with authority, high levels of guilt, and also sometimes somatic conditions. So you notice that there were factors that put parents into fragility. So this is only to show you that we made a little study. This was in our clinic also. We didn't have, at the moment when we conducted this small study, we just wanted to see if children having ODD generalized in different conditions and children with ODD just in the family were somehow different. And so we compared these children. We had 55 having generalized condition and 20 having family context dependent condition of ODD. And so you see, sorry, that we had a more prevalence of anxiety, and it was clinically significant for phobic disorders. And we also noticed in this population that you know that anxiety is correlated to verbal comprehension, and we therefore stratified the population on the verbal comprehension tasks of the WISC, and you see that in both groups, if you want ICV below 100 and ICV above 100, that anxiety disorders were more prevalent in the familial context ODD group. So that's just a small insight into our study population. And we also had other characteristics in this population. We had also higher, the families came from a higher background in social, professional conditions. Severe somatic antecedents, we found them also in our group. They were quite prevalent in the family context ODD. We also had higher emotionality. This is not surprising, given the higher levels of anxiety. And we also had less pharmacological treatment in the group with the family context prevalent ODD. So the general principles of treatment are to raise protection factors and to diminish the risk factors. And so we noticed that in these families with these children showing ODD or CD just in the family, we were quite in difficulty because the classical model of CBT and parent management didn't work that well. Because you know that the focus is to change parental strategies to modify the children's behavior. And for this, you use the observation of the child, you give efficient instructions, you do the contingency management, and you reinforce the parent's progress by the therapist and also the peer group. And you change the focus of reward. You give positive reward for appropriate behaviors, and you try to reinforce the disruptive behavior. But what happens is, you know that in these groups, when the experiences we had from the parent management groups where we experienced the usual moderators of treatment effects, child, family, social factors. You know it works best in families having children of relatively low age. But we also noticed that family dynamics. Children were insensitive to parents' rewards. And this was the main problem we had with these very specific families in the group. The children didn't care about the parents' rewards, and this was very problematic. We also had a very high level of accommodation strategies in parents, and so this was quite difficult to get rid of. We had highly educated parents, but it didn't work. And we had intelligent children not buying the reinforcements from the parents. And so I'm going to hand over now to Nathalie, and she is going to tell you more about the program of nonviolent resistance.
Thank you. So I'm very happy to be here to present you my clinical experience about our program. First, I want to apologize for my English accent. I hope you will understand me. Today, I want to talk about the specific population that Diane has already described. We talk about tyrannic relationships in the family. What we notice in our clinical practice is this population of where the dynamic is completely destroyed, and when children take the control on the family. We have developed questions that we ask to parents to know if they are in this situation or not. For example, what is important is to know if they are afraid of the reactions of their children. So it means that it's also something subjective. It's not only the level of violence of the child, but mostly what the parent feels about this behavior. We describe also parents that are not in a position to decide. That's what you say, that they cannot choose where they will go on holidays, what they look on TV, where they will sit in the table for the dinner. And we discover that step by step, the child has taken the whole control, even if they are sisters or brothers. What is also very important is that they have given up many fields of their lives, like job, like affective relationships, and that they mostly they don't even realize that they have renounced to many things. And parents most of the time feel ashamed. And what is specific is that the child has no behavior problem out of the house, so that nobody can guess what happens and how he behaves at home with his parents. And that is specific also because parents keep in secret what happens and don't want people to know what they live. And what we notice when we give questionnaires, for example, is that the children are seen like perfect children or even anxious, sometimes at school, but never not in this group with aggressive behavior. I'm used to animate parent management training, especially in ADHD or in oppositional disorders, for more than 10 years, like Barclay programs. But I had to realize that sometimes it doesn't work. Some families say that they cannot set up with the strategies that we give. And that's for the reasons that Diane said before. They have no power anymore at home to make contracts with children. For example, the system of earning points for good behavior. To say if your behavior is okay, you will earn points and you will have more computer time. It's not. It's out of question because the child has already what he wants at home and has no motivation at all for changing. So I noticed that in our classical programs, the parents don't manage to have a result, and they feel even more ashamed and disappointed because they feel that they cannot exactly do this, and they feel even more guilty after. And we realized that we were needing something else, where the focus is not the change of the child, but the change of the parents. Our program started 2.5 years ago. Now we have a financial budget to assess our results, but we have no results today at the moment. And we have to say that when we started this program, we made information about this with a big interest of media. And today we also have French media with us. That's why we have another camera here, because they are interested in what we offer for these families. And it's very difficult to have a rate or to have a prevalence of this kind of behavior because it's still a taboo subject. Especially in France, maybe for the reasons we had a discussion at the break about this. Maybe in France, it's even more complicated to say that we have problems of education with children. So that's the book that we wrote together with Haim that describes our program. And I will give you the important steps of our of our program. The first session, so in this program, we have about 15 families coming every week during 10 to 13 sessions, and it lasts about 2 hours. It's a model of group, and we give to the parents, we give them advice, and we see what they can set in or not. The first session is very important because it creates alliance between parents. First, we describe the problem of the families and the dynamics. We describe what is a tyrannic behavior. We talk about violence, physical violence or verbal violence. Also about psychological violence, threats of suicide, for example, or we describe what the family live, and the parents have to introduce themselves and to say what they have done before, what they live in everyday life. And this is very important for them in what they say, because they discover that they are not alone in this situation, and that what is more surprising for them is that they are similar to other parents. They are also high level, I mean, on socio-professional status. They are very sensitive to the needs of the children. They have the same kinds of problematics of anxious children and also children that cannot regulate emotion frustration. They all are desperate, especially at the first session, but not hopeless and motivated for change. But most of the time they say it's our last chance because we have already done everything and now we are okay to try, but after this we don't have any hope. So it's a big pressure for us. The second session, we implemented this session after to describe the diagnosis of the children, because most of the time they have minimum 2 diagnoses, ADHD, anxiety. It's important to describe because if we don't take this time, during the program, the parents will always come back to say, my child cannot control itself because he has ADHD, or I cannot let him, I cannot do what you say because he's too anxious, and they will justify the problems by the symptoms, and this can be something that will slow the change. So we prefer to take time to explain that they all have troubles and disorders, but that in any way it doesn't justify violent behavior, and that we will help and not take care about treatments or not, or diagnosis or not. That is another part of the therapy. We take time to describe familial accommodation. We saw it yesterday in anxiety, but we also have another kind of accommodation when parents fear the temper tantrums, the crisis, and often they say, in French we say that they walk on eggs. It's as if we move, everything can be broken. And they say we want to avoid crisis, so we always find solutions so that our child has no frustration and that he can keep calm. But we have to explain at this session that it's not a solution and that crisis will arrive anyway, but for smallest things when time is passing. So we have these 2 kinds, and what is very difficult with these children is that often they have also anxiety, and dysregulation, mood dysregulation or emotional dysregulation, and parents try sometimes to say no, we will not reconfort you, but when they try not to do what the child expects, they have a crisis that can last a few hours long. The fourth session, sorry, is a description of NVR. We introduce it quite late. We explain the principles and the escalation of violence also. This is in French, but we explain that when the child has a violent behavior, parents have two ways to react when they react immediately. Either they will have a hard reaction and it will induce or create violence, and if not, they will have a too soft reaction and explain and try to justify. And in this case, also, in both cases, the child will be winning because in a case he thinks that his parent cannot control himself. In another way, he thinks that he has to justify what he does. So when they react immediately, they are always, it will be always wrong. So we have to, at this level, to stay now, you have to delay your reactions. And that's what we explain in this session. The fifth session is the most difficult at the moment, and we try to find solutions, more individual support, for example, to see parents in individual sessions. It's the creation of the support network. We have to say that nobody knows what they live, so it's very difficult for us, for them to talk about it and to go out of the secret for objections that were described yesterday. And we ask them to find 10 persons. We say maybe they have already 2 or 3 persons that know what happens, and we want them to find 10 because it will force them to go over their fear. But it's not at the moment. Still, we didn't find the perfect solution to get and to manage to do this step of the program, and it's maybe the most difficult. Then, when they have tried or begun to found a support network, they learn to write and to read the announcement of non-violence to their children. They can be helped by the support group. In the 7th session, we have to explain how to delay reactions with sit-in, information of the support group, even sometimes reparation for when there is something broken or when something happened in the house. So this is not specific for, not very specific for this population. The 8th session is the crisis management. Sometimes we do it earlier. It depends on the groups. In this session, we have an individual meeting with parents where we write an emergency letter. We give it to the parents and we say, when at the next crisis, when your child is violent with you or when he breaks everything at home, you have to call the emergency services, and you say that you had to do it. The doctor told you to do so, and they have to come. And we write on the letter that the parents are involved in our therapy, that the child has many behavior problems, that we have asked to the parents to do so if there is violence at home, and that child has to be taken to hospital to be assessed. This is very important because parents are. It's difficult for parents to call police or firemen because they think it's not legitimate. They think that it's too much. That there are more important problems than educational problems, and also they are sometimes afraid because they know that the child can manipulate the person that will come to say that they are violent parents, because it happens also. So like this, they can be secure and think that they will be understood, and that there will not be this kind of problem. In the 9th session, it comes late, and it should be maybe the first session, but parents are not ready to take care of themselves when they arrive in the groups, because they think that the priority is the behavior of the child and the problems of the child. So it comes late, but it's a very important step. And we say to the parents that they have to do things for themselves, so they are not ready for this, and they say, I don't want to, because most of the time they are depressed or they don't want anymore. And we say that they don't do it for them, but for the situation, that it's a step, an important step of the program. Even if they don't want to go to cinema or to do something else, they have to do it. And we introduce also mindfulness strategies, that we cannot do it really in this session, but we give information, and we say that it's important for them to find strategies to be able to delay the answer when there is a violent behavior. The 10 sessions that I will not describe because it would be much too long is management of the screens use. That is very problematic in this population. And the last session is the feedback of the parents, and that give conclusions and their point of view. So this is a short video of a mother that was participating to our very first group 2.5 years ago. She accepted to give her experience for this congress. Her child was 13 when she came. He has ADHD with a medical treatment and had violent behavior. She had seen maybe 10 or 15 psychiatrists or psychologists since he's 1 or 2 years old. And she explained also that every psychiatrist she saw, when the therapy was over, she was even more guilty than when it started. So when she came, she had no special expectations, but she came. So I will show you the video. Hop là. Non, c'est pas ça. Ah non, attends. Hop, j'espère que ça va marcher.
And so you asked me if I was willing to participate.
Oui, attends, c'est dommage. C'est quand
It sounded like something new to me, and something that really appealed to something inside of me. I don't know what exactly, but...
Can you hear it?
Meeting with other parents, maybe it was something difficult or something helping.
We can let it 7 minutes, or it's too long. It's okay. Okay.
For you?
Okay, so we start at the beginning, so... Yeah, because it's the end after. We don't have anything more. Okay.
And so you asked me if I was willing to participate to your first group, and I said, well, I've tried everything else, why not? But sure, it won't work, because if something was to have worked, it would have worked before. So when I came to the group, I was really desperate. I think I was really depressed, but I didn't want to go on antidepressant. I was crying all the time. For me it was hopeless, and I never thought it could help.
But you came.
But I came because I had nothing to lose anymore. I never had anything to lose, but less than ever. And I remember the first session when everybody told about his story, her story rather, with their children. And I was crying so much I couldn't even speak. And then I came back because it sounded like something new, to me, and something that really appealed to something inside of me. I don't know what exactly, but
meeting with other parents, maybe it was something difficult or something helping for you?
I can't say it was really helping. I mean, I could see that some people had the same problem than I had, but I mean, it didn't help in the way that I didn't think, oh, there is worth, or, oh, I mean, I wasn't comparing myself to anyone. I was just thinking we were all sinking in the same boat, and maybe there was a hope of, I mean, not drowning together, and one by one. And what helped me when I talked with the others, it helped in the way that it put a distance between what happened and me. Because I mean, I wasn't. I mean, it helped for distanciation between me and the problem. It was not. I mean, I was not suffering because of Antoine. I mean, Antoine was suffering. Other kids or children were suffering. The parents were suffering, but we were not. I mean, it helped in the way that it helped me. I think the first time it helped me realize that it was not my problem, but it was Antoine's problem, the way it was the other parents' children's problem, and the distanciation was very helpful. I mean, it helped me step away from the mess and the violence. So I didn't belong to the violence anymore. It helped me step away and see it instead of live it. What helped me was we were told never to react at first, but we were told to delay and say, well, I'll see later, let me think about it, and then we will talk about it later. At first, he was really even more violent when I said that, like throwing things away and breaking things in the house. But then the crises were shorter and shorter every time, and in the end, they disappeared totally.
Yes, so you managed to...
I managed to stay calm through the crisis, not to react, focus on my whatever, thought or knitting or breathing and let it pass. It was not my problem anymore, it was his problem. So I learned how to focus on myself and preserve myself too, because when you get mad, you're not yourself anymore, and it's worse. So this really helped. What helped was that we were told to care about ourselves, and I didn't. I mean, it was a long time since I hadn't done it, so. I tried to, I mean, I had been escaping myself, like working too much and then not be able to work anymore and being really low and not being even able to read anymore or do any of the things I liked to do. So I started again to go to my yoga classes. I started playing the cello. I started reading again. I started trying to make my house pretty, and I started to grow flowers on my window sills. I mean, I bought flowers for my house and pet my cats, and I mean, feeling alive again. It was really nice for me. And see my friends outside for fun, and instead of being always focused on my violent son. And I think it helped because it helped him see that I could live not through him. I mean,
your life doesn't belong to
my
to
life
him.
doesn't belong to him, and his life doesn't belong to me. And this was really important for me to cut the link, this kind of link. Not that I wasn't. I mean, I was thinking I could save him. Now I know I can't save him. I mean, I can save myself, and I can give him the tools to save himself. But let's see what happened. And trust. I mean, I must trust myself. I must trust him. And this I learned in the group too, because I couldn't trust myself anymore. I couldn't trust Antoine anymore. I didn't feel legitimate as a mother. I felt that I wasn't even able to raise a child anymore. And through the group, I mean, I became a person again. I became a mother again. And
I think she has the words of the end.